Hello again, and welcome. Sorry about that. And this is a few good men, and happy New Year to our viewing audience. We have an exciting show tonight, and we really appreciate you coming on and viewing. We'll just give the audience just a bit of time to come on, and while we do so, I'll bring on our guest for tonight. All right, Sam. How are you, my brother?
Good. Not too
Wonderful
bad.
one. Not too bad. Wonderful man. Well, happy New Year.
Thanks and same to you.
How was that? How was the New Year for you? How did you bring it in?
I was in bed and I was awakened by the fireworks.
Oh man. Well, I was asleep.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think I went to sleep about 10 o'clock, and that was it for me, man. But you know,
Yeah, we were in bed around then or probably just around 9 o'clock because we were so tired. So this has been us for the past couple of years actually. Like 3 years. The fireworks would
wow.
wake us up. Yeah.
All right. So, guys, I'm ready for tonight. Just take the opportunity to share the light. This is a few good men. Our first episode for the new year, 2022. We look forward to some great programs coming up this year, and we have plans to just take it up a notch. But tonight we're going to be having our first virtual wine and chocolate tasting party. Yes, Sam, you have your wine close to you. What are you drinking? What are you having?
Merlot.
Okay,
I have
wonderful.
my designated taster tonight.
Tell me, so who is that?
This is
Oh,
my beautiful wife, Kim.
Kim, welcome to the program again.
Yeah, happy New Year to everybody.
Yes. So how was the new year for you? I mean,
It was interesting and still is interesting.
mm,
But I enjoyed looking at the fireworks from my bed.
okay. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, guys, just share the live, hit the like button, hit the like button. This is going to be a wonderful show tonight. I'll take the opportunity right now to bring in our guest, but before I do, I would just like to again said a pleasant and happy new year to one and all. This year, we look forward to great things, and tonight I think we will start it off just right with a little new year's wine and chocolate tasting event. But in order to celebrate the new year in fine style, we have invited our good friend Aaron Sylvester of Trial and Chocolate to the program as we prepare to taste some delicious locally made chocolate while sipping on some fine wine. No, I have my chocolate here with me. Actually, I have all three flavors. So this one here is the dark chocolate at 80%. And then I have here the 75% as well, and also the 56%. But, I'm no chocolatier. I'll bring in the professional to be able to explain to you about his product. And yeah, we get into this tonight's show. All right. So welcome to the platform, Aaron Sylvester. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year to everybody. How are you all?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
New
Um,
Year. Welcome.
Thank you and welcome too. So I'm guessing you're at your studio, Trial and Chocolate, from the
Yeah,
background.
that's right. That's right. In the full age. That's where I
Oh,
am.
and foliage. All right. So now, without further ado, I think the first thing we'll take the opportunity to move a toast. This is the new year, and I'll give you the pleasure of doing so. Would that put you on spot?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the platform. I've been watching what you guys have been up to, and it's just a testament to the hard work that you guys have been putting in. So onwards and upwards in 2022 to you guys and to everybody at home. I hope we all have a fruitful year. I hope we have a far better year than the last 2 years. And I guess it's the only way is up, and we can only look forward. So cheers to
Correct.
you, and cheers to everybody else.
All right. Thank you, man. Cheers.
Wonderful.
Share.
Cheers.
All right, Aaron. Before we get into tonight's chocolate tasting, just give a little bit more background about yourself. And who are you? Who is Aaron Sylvester?
So Aaron Sylvester is the gentleman who was born in the UK, parents who were born in Crowshoe in Felix Park, who left when they were in their 20s and moved to the UK where it's lovely and cold. Aaron then decided that it was way better to be in Grenada when he was older, so decided to come back to Grenada and use the 2 acres of land that his lovely grandparents and late grandparents had left him, which has an amalgamation of cocoa and nutmeg and cinnamon on the land, and decide to educate himself on how to make chocolate and how to be a cocoa farmer and how to actually look after the land, and decided to start making chocolate from the tree all the way to the bar in 2017, 2018. So that's the kind of the chocolate part of Aaron. And then the kind of I guess the earlier part is my story about how I kind of started off in music. So my background is that I used to work in the music industry many years ago, marketing bands and singers from worked with different artists, UK, US, whether it's Estelle, Jay-Z, Lupe Fiasco, just different artists doing marketing for them when MySpace was popular. So I'm showing my age there. But in essence, that's where it all started. So it was all about marketing. Marketing is very much what I kind of grew up with and what I studied and what I kind of majored in. And I've kind of used that and evolved that into my current career, which is a chocolate maker and a cocoa farmer. And obviously a large proportion of that is evolved into different experiences that I offer in Grenada, from the very popular make your own chocolate bar experience that we do here at my factory, where people can pick different ingredients from marshmallows, pepper, salt, coffee, nutmeg, cinnamon, you name it, and in 25 minutes they can make their own dark chocolate bar here at our factory. So to whether we do our Rastafarian tour that we do with my uncle Atiba, who's up in Mamakan, where people can understand about the Rastafarian culture, the hair, the food, the music, everything else like that, because a lot of tourists that I connect with only really understand Rastafarian culture when it begins with Bob and ends with Marley, and there's a whole lot more to it than that. So my uncle, who knows all about farming, and obviously that's the culture that he's grew up in, can explain that to people. So we kind of come together and we offer the people the chance to go up to the land, really connect with him, learn from him, and have a nice ital meal at the end of the afternoon. So in a nutshell, that's kind of me, give or take.
Okay. So what would you say that you've learned, you did marketing in the UK, and I'm sure you've taken elements from that experience and applied it to making chocolate here, but just how does that work? And how do you go about really marketing and promoting your brand, Trial and Chocolate?
I think the thing about marketing the brand has always been, I've never launched a product before. So this was the first, I guess, thorough into marketing a product of any sort and building a brand, right? I've always been marketing brands that are already made, whether it's an artist who's already got 5 albums, or whether it's a new artist that the record label had signed, but they had millions to put behind that person to make them a big celebrity and a big star. So I've had to start from the ground up. I had a vision, I had an idea, and I had a passion. And it was very much around the fact that I knew when I was growing up, when I would only really visit Grenada for summer holidays when I was growing up in the UK, but I knew that we had great cocoa, we produced great chocolate, but it wasn't readily available in the UK. And Grenadian Chocolate Company at one point had the chocolate in the UK, and I knew that it was available, but on a mass scale, we weren't exporting enough of our great products out there into the wider world, which knew that we had great products, or great cocoa, I should say, but weren't able to buy the great chocolate. So for me, it was very much about focusing on that. How could I use and work with the fruits and the spices that we have, combine that with the great cocoa, and create a great product, and then around that create great experiences. And that was very much the focus that I had, and still what I have today around that.
Okay, Sam, are you ready to get into digging?
Yeah,
Mrs. James.
Already.
All right. Well,
I have the 80% of.
The 80%. No, I want to ask the two of you a question, just very briefly. No, I know we're so accustomed to the milk chocolate from the US. But just really sampling our locally made chocolate. What's your take on it? And was it a shock to your taste buds when you made the switch, or how was it for you?
Well, actually, we always, it's not, it's, this dark chocolate would not be our first experience. Um, we love dark chocolate. As a matter of fact, our children love dark chocolate. If you go into a refrigerator right now, you will see dark chocolate in there.
Okay.
So I'm just eager to see how surprised I will be at this new experience.
Oh,
But we
wonderful.
always look at the healthier option. I love chocolate, the milk chocolate also. But my husband has always been behind me because I love chocolate to try the healthier option. So he was very good at convincing me in using dark chocolate. So I'm in a much better place now when it comes to dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. All right.
This is our first Tri-Island chocolate, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Can't wait to dig in. So, Aaron, I
Mom,
think you want to take it away. Sam, hold on. I find it opening yours too quick, man.
it's just the packaging is so nice, and I
Yeah,
just
I know,
like
right?
to open it. Let me.
Before we start, just take me through the packaging, Aaron. Just very quickly. Just give us an idea of the story behind it, the packaging.
Yeah, so I guess the thing about chocolate and the thing about packaging in general is that people buy with their eyes. So for me, it was how could I create a packaging which I guess was contemporary, modern, and quintessentially Caribbean. And that really was what I wanted to communicate in the packaging. So I worked with a designer who kind of took the ideas that I had. I created, I would have to say, at least 18 different Pinterest boards because I couldn't define the idea that I wanted. I just knew I liked different elements, colors, logos, a bit of gold, Caribbean colors, imagery, leaves, all of these different elements that I wanted to incorporate. But what I wanted it to be is that no matter where you found the chocolate bar, it would feel premium, it would feel quality, and people would admire it. And that's really what I wanted to create. Because when you have all the chocolate bars on the shelf and you walk into a big supermarket or what have you, everyone struggles to pick what they want. And one element, it's the packaging. Another element is the price. And the other element is they know of it because somebody else told them about it. So for me, is how could I incorporate all of the key attributes that would make you pick it up no matter where you were and feel proud that Grenada has a great chocolate bar and great chocolate product.
All right.
It feels
So,
rich, and it just holding the
It does.
packaging, and
It
I
does. And
just
as I say, we consume dark chocolate, but this one just seems to feel so special in your hand. Look at the packaging.
yeah. It's
Nice.
like
yeah,
it's like you're gonna get a nice
Surprise
necklace
inside. Yeah.
or some kind of gold something, in there.
Okay,
How much
Sam,
you
there's no gold inside. I can tell you now, I'm afraid.
well, it's our black gold in it.
There's
So,
something better than gold, right? Or black gold, as
Black
it said.
gold. Black gold.
All right,
Very
there
good.
you go.
There
so
you go.
take it away. I'm going to pull up on the screen. You have your presentation, so I'll just make sure that our viewers could take a look at it as well. All right. So take it away. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so if you just pop to the next slide for me, Colin. So as I just mentioned, obviously I've been working in the music industry previously, and there's a lovely image of myself and the team I was working with when we were looking after Usher Raymond for one of his albums. And in essence, marketing is my background, but now my love is cocoa and my love is chocolate. And as I mentioned, I've really come back to do justice to what my family had kind of given to me and my brother with this 2 acres of land to create this great chocolate that we kind of worked with. But to the next slide, in essence, I moved back to Grenada in 2016, started working on the different flavors and the different chocolates. And you'll see with the bars that we have on the screen, we have St. Mark's and then 2 St. Andrews bars. And I always get questioned why we have that. But to explain to those that don't know, my farm is in St. Andrews in Crowshoe. So the beans from that farm I use to make the yellow bar, which is the 75% dark chocolate with bee pollen. And then we have the orange bar, which is 56% dark milk. Now, normally you have white chocolate at one end of the scale, then you come up a little bit higher, and then you have milk chocolate, and then you have something which is around 50 to 60% chocolate, and that, or cocoa, I should say, and that's a dark milk. Anything that's in essence 60% and up is out and out dark chocolate. So that's how you determine where it is on the kind of the scale. And then we make our highest percentage cocoa chocolate is our 80%, which we're going to try today. So in 2017, when I had gone to different farms, picked different beans from different locations and worked with different farmers to test their beans, I decided I was going to work with the beans from St. Mark's, which is Mount Edgecombe, and I used the beans from there to make this 80% bar, and the rest of the beans come from my farm. But the objective eventually is to have a different chocolate bar from every parish in Grenada, so that the farmers have something that they can really feel is their own. They can really feel that the quality of the beans from their parish is great, and they are great. It's just finding the good beans and mixing those with the great flavors that we come up with. But everybody knows the challenge that we have in Grenada, that the average age of a farmer is 75. So it's not going to be long before we don't have many farmers who are going to be harvesting cocoa. So the real passion for me is to flip that onto the agro processing end and have more people, more farmers, children, what have you, involved in adding value to that cocoa, so we can start making more products and hopefully get people to make sure that they focus on the harvesting and the management of cocoa, so we don't have any gluts in cocoa production moving down the line. So in 2018, I launched the company Trial in Chocolate at the Grenada Chocolate Festival. And then from there, we then started to open our factory in 2019, which we were previously on Lucas Street. And we would give people a chance to come and do the different experiences that we offer here, whether it's chocolate tasting, chocolate bar making, and honey tasting. Obviously, 2020 came along, and that was an interesting year for us all. So sadly, I had to close the factory because obviously landlords weren't giving anybody a break, and we had no tourists coming into the country, and the borders were closed. So we had to pause production at that point. And 5 months ago, we reopened the chocolate factory at the Fall Edge up in Belmont and in St. George. And now we offer the experience that we offer now, which is still the chocolate making and the honey tasting and the make your own chocolate bar experiences. So that brings us up to where we are to this present day. On to the next slide. So as I said, we give you the chance to come. You can make your own chocolate. We offer it to adults and children. It takes about 20 minutes to make your own chocolate bar, working with an array of about 15 different ingredients. And it's a great fun experience for the family. And everyone gets the chance to really come into the factory, learn about how we make chocolate in Grenada, and actually see the machines working and see what they do, and learn from the actual harvesting of that cocoa bean all the way through to making your own chocolate bar. And if you want to put salt and almonds, it's up to you. If you want to put marshmallows and nutmeg, you could do that either. It's completely up to you. And as I tell everybody, if it tastes good, it's because you made it. If it tastes bad, it's also because you made it. So ultimately, it's completely up to you what you want to create. Next slide.
All right.
So as hopefully everybody knows, Grenada is the smallest country in the world with the most chocolate factories. We have Grenada Chocolate Company, the founders of Treat Bar Chocolate in Grenada. You have Diamond Chocolate Factory, Juve as some call it. You have Belmont Estate. You have Crayfish Bay, and then you have myself as the smallest and the youngest chocolate company on the island. So that's one of the things that some people forget, but we do have 5, all making dark chocolate in an array of different flavors and different inclusions in the chocolate bar. Next slide. So now we're going to kind of get into what everyone's hopefully here to experience. So the one thing I do want to caveat with this chocolate tasting is tasting chocolate is very, very much subjective. It's far more important to enjoy what you're sensing and what you're tasting than it is about trying to find that nuanced flavor and that particular note that some people can get fixated on. So I just like to caveat that at the beginning, but that's really, if you're doing it on a professional level, that's fine. But this is really for friends who come together, gonna taste some chocolate, and you can do, I don't know what chocolate bars everybody has at home, whether it's Juve, Belmont Estate, Grenadian Chocolate Company, Crayfish Bay, or mine, but you can do this with any dark chocolate, fundamentally from Grenada, or at least from a cocoa growing country. If you have any Cadbury's, Nestle, and Hershey's, that's definitely not the right chocolate to be consuming right now, okay? Because you're not going to taste anything other than a hell of a lot of sugar and a hell of a lot of cocoa butter. So there's not going to be really anything in there for you to actually taste. So, Curlin, I think you might have a question or two you might wanted to ask.
Yes, definitely. I think one of my first question that pops into my head. So the factor that determines the price of chocolate, and why are some chocolates more expensive than others, really?
Yeah, that's a question that I get asked a lot, because if you look at all of the chocolate companies in Grenada, primarily the prices will vary significantly across the board, and that's very much down to a few factors. Firstly, it's the effort that the chocolate maker has put into making that. It's how much cocoa do they have to harvest. So if someone has 100 acres, they can obviously harvest a hell of a lot of cocoa against someone who only has 2 or 4 acres, for example. Then there's the cost of production. So if you have a far smaller operation, it's going to cost a hell of a lot more to produce the chocolate and the cocoa products that you produce. Then you have the ingredient costs, then you have the staff and the facilities, and then there's things like logistics to get the chocolate off the island to other countries. That incurs a hell of a lot of cost, and then the general packaging as well. So all of those are different variables that play a large part into the cost of why a candy bar, like a Hershey's or a Snickers or a Mars bar, is significantly cheaper compared to a dark chocolate, for example.
Oh, actually, before you even move on, there's a question here that I would just want to put up on screen so that you can see it. So the question is, what's the minimum cocoa content that you would consider to taste great flavor? Okay. So what's the minimum cocoa content that you would consider to taste great flavor?
See, the thing with that's a very difficult question to answer, because ultimately I've tasted some really good white chocolates, and white chocolates ultimately are just a hell of a lot of cocoa butter with sugar and milk powder. So there's not a huge amount of cocoa in it, but if you use the cocoa butter well, mixed with whatever the inclusion might be, you can actually create a really great flavored chocolate against a dark milk chocolate, which has around 20 to 30% cocoa, which also can be good. So typically everybody likes to say that dark chocolate is the only chocolate that you can get the good flavors from. But across the board, depending on the terroir, the country, the different flavors of the bean, which gives you the flavor of the butter, you can actually have different flavored and great flavored and tasting chocolate, from a milk chocolate down to a white chocolate, all the way up to a dark chocolate. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. All right. So tell me, when do we start to taste? Is it too early?
Okay. So there's a few steps we have to go through before we start tasting. All right. So typically, if you're tasting dark chocolate, which we are in this instance, you'd take the chocolate out of the fridge 15 minutes before, because typically you keep it in the fridge to keep it nice and cool. So you take it out, leave it on the table, let it acclimatize to the room temperature before you start tasting the chocolate. Okay. Also, if we were doing this professionally, you wouldn't eat something 2 hours before you're tasting chocolate, because don't worry, no need to raise the eyebrows. We're going to taste chocolate. Don't worry. I'm just saying, typically,
Like you just ate it.
typically, if you've had a curry or whatever you may have had beforehand, a lot of the flavors from what you've eaten are going to be still in your palate. So you're going to find it really difficult to taste the chocolate correctly. So you just be very mindful of that. And the last thing is you would or wouldn't really have wine when tasting chocolate professionally, because obviously the tannins from the wine are going to be transferred through to the chocolate and onto your taste buds. So you would struggle to be able to taste the chocolate. But as I said, we're doing this for fun. So we're not going to get too focused on the do's and the don'ts. So we're going to taste the chocolate and have some fun with it. So what you would do is you make sure you've washed your hands, because you're going to be picking up chocolate, and you don't want to have detergent on your hands or soap, because what you wouldn't want to do is to smell that when you're tasting the chocolate or when you're smelling the chocolate. That's the other thing you would do. You'd ideally, obviously, me being on the full edge means I've got cement trucks driving by very quickly, but you would typically be in a quiet, dark room so you can focus on the chocolate and focus on what you're tasting. So you're in the moment. Then typically what we do is we'd start from the dark chocolate and you would work your way down. In this instance, we're tasting at 80% dark chocolate, so we're in the right place. But obviously, if you're tasting many different chocolate bars that you would have bought from the supermarket or a specialty chocolate shop, I'd always say start with the higher percentage, work your way down, because the lower percentage is always going to be sweeter. So the sugars are going to be, and the cocoa butter would have coated your tongue if you start with a lower percentage chocolate and try and work your way up, because all you're going to keep tasting is sugar all over your tongue. So you'd start from the dark chocolate and work your way down to the milk or to the white chocolate.
Okay, you could pause just 1 second and just maybe just refer to this question here. Houston is asking, can chocolate be aged, and how does that affect the taste? I don't know if you quickly answer that as you're speaking
Sure.
about the taste. Yeah.
So chocolate can be aged, just like when you age wine or you age rum. You produce the product and then you leave it in a rightly cooled, stored location. And over time, the flavor of that product, in this case chocolate, will mature. And in some instances, chocolate is very fruity at the beginning, and then as it matures, it can evolve. The flavors will change. I personally like to make my chocolate fresh and sell it quickly and sell it fresh, whereas others do like to leave their chocolate to age, because as it ages, it can become better in flavor, and in some instances it cannot. And it really depends on the chocolate maker and the chocolate which they're producing to determine what they want it to taste like. But to answer the question, if you have chocolate and it's dark chocolate, the ingredients within chocolate don't go off, because it's ultimately sugar, cocoa butter, and cocoa beans, and it doesn't have a sell-by date in theory. If you're making a milk chocolate, obviously milk powder or milk goes off, so the chocolate in turn would go off at some point. So which is why dark chocolate can always be aged, and just keeping a chocolate bar in your fridge for multiple months will age naturally anyway, because you haven't had it from the day it was produced for several months. So it will age and it will slightly change flavor over that time. So I hope that answers that question also. So what you would typically have is, in this case, we have wine, but what you could have is a nice glass of warm water, because as you're tasting chocolates, the cocoa butter in the cocoa will end up being on your tongue. So you'd like a warm glass of water just to be able to cleanse your palate. So I think everyone understands the do's and don'ts. I can see in your eyes, you're just saying, Aaron, I want to taste chocolate now. So, without further,
we just pulled two orders from the fridge. We have 70% and 60% from other companies, because we usually keep them around.
Nice. So what we will do, so firstly, you would pull out the packaging, you pull out your bar, which you have. You would check the chocolate bar to look at the percentage. You then look at the chocolate bar to see where it comes from, because some chocolate bars don't like to tell you the country, some don't like to tell you the actual percentage. These are all signs for something that isn't a good dark chocolate. At the back of the chocolate, it should tell you the ingredients. If the first ingredient and the largest ingredient is sugar, that's never a good thing. That would tell you, that's the sign that what you're tasting is a confection or a candy bar and not a dark chocolate. If it's a dark chocolate made from a single origin location or a chocolate growing location, it should always start with cocoa first and then work its way down through the other ingredients, whether it be cocoa butter or sugar. So what I would then say that you would do is that you would take the chocolate bar out of the packaging and just open up the foil, if you have foil, or in this case for my chocolate, the plastic seal, and I would pull it up to my nose and breathe in and just try and get some flavors from the packaging without touching the chocolate at this stage.
Just open the thing and then you can smell.
Oh yeah.
So other than cocoa, is there anything particular that you're getting from that?
I think it's nutmeg. Can you smell nutmeg?
It smells nutmeggy, coffee-ish.
Yes, coffee is kind of earthy. Coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good start. Oh, anything else?
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon. You have any spice? Any spices?
I'm not going to say anything till the end. This is for you to tell me what you're tasting or what you're smelling. Sorry, at this point. Curlin?
I would assume it must. I know it must have
Some kind of
spices in it,
nutmeg,
but like I said, I'm getting
it's nutmeggy
kind of
cinnamon.
a nutmeggy but still fruity flavor. I don't know if I'm. Now you say you wouldn't tell me if I'm correct, but I know I'm correct.
Yeah, I don't have a trained palate.
You don't have to have it. It's just it's just what you're smelling, right? So
Okay.
that's the key. So now we've opened it. Now pull the chocolate bar out. And now we're going to look at the chocolate bar. So in instance of my bar, you'll see it has lots of undulations inside of it. And the design of that chocolate bar is the topography of the farm, of my farm in Crowshoe. So as the industry of cocoa is very uneven, where sometimes the farmers that do all the hard work don't get paid the right price, and the people that sometimes buy those beans do, the chocolate bar kind of represents how the industry is very uneven, but more importantly, it's showing a unique way of having a chocolate bar where typically you'd have straight lines and you'd have squares, and I just wanted to kind of emulate the packaging. If you look at the outside of the packaging, you will see the topography lines, and I've just carried that through onto the chocolate bar itself. So now we have the chocolate bar that we're looking at. You're going to carefully have a close look. You're looking for a shiny, glossy outer chocolate bar, and that determines and that conveys that a chocolate bar has been tempered and produced correctly. If it's dull or matte looking, it may have come out of temperature or come out of temper in this instance. So if you are familiar with any kind of Mars bar or Snickers or Twix, those chocolate bars have a very dull looking chocolate outer. But when you're looking at high-end, fine flavored craft chocolate, it should always have a nice glossy finish. Occasionally, you might see a few bubbles where there's lines in the chocolate. You might see some bubbles. Those are just air bubbles that haven't been tapped out of the chocolate bar. But that's just something that you just happens. It's not a defect in chocolate. It's just to show you that sometimes when chocolate is tapped during the production process, you do your best to get those air bubbles out. So sometimes some of them just retain inside the chocolate bar. So at this point, I will ask you to put the chocolate bar close to, in your case, Sam and Kim, snap the chocolate bar in two, so each of you have a piece.
And as usual, the woman must get the bigger piece.
Bigger piece, yes. Whoa, no, come on, that's unfair. That's unfair. No, Aaron, I noticed that you mentioned about the contours of the chocolate, but I just want viewers to really understand that this is actually from Google Maps. You was able to map out your property, right? Am I correct? And also the contour.
100%. So I'm not particularly technical when it comes to design, but I knew what I wanted, and I had a friend that was great at all that computer CAD design stuff, and then obviously Google is free for everybody. So between mapping my farm on Google Maps and passing that over to my good friend who's good with computers, he was able to do some technical wizardry and then made it so that my chocolate bar could then be mapped onto a mold, which was then sent to someone who then created the vacuum form mold, which I can then use to make my chocolate bars using the topography of my farm. So, Kim, you may need to learn about how to split evenly. Just.
I think so. He's been.
I'm looking at that plate right now, and I feel sad.
Sam, yo.
I really do. So
don't worry, I will share with him.
Yeah, well, we don't believe you.
So what at this point, what you're gonna do? You're both gonna take your pieces of chocolate and you're gonna place it next to your ear, and you're gonna snap the chocolate bar. And what you're listening for is a high click snap. And when you have that high snap, that's an example of a well-tempered chocolate bar.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
It's there, man. Trust me, it's there.
So this time, I want you to do the same thing again, but I want you to do it in front of your nose. And I want you to breathe in when you do that snap and tell me what you smell.
A lot of cocoa.
A lot of cocoa.
Okay, good.
Yeah, busting. Yeah, cocoa flavor.
Cocoa flavor, yeah.
So that at this point, you've got the aromas that are coming off that chocolate bar, and that's what we're looking for. Sometimes you can have, not in terms of this particular bar, but in general, sometimes you'll have citrus, kind of smells berries, nuts. You know, in this case, it's strong cocoa because we're working with an 80% chocolate. So that's to be expected. And when you hear that snap, you're looking and listening for a clean snap of chocolate. As I mentioned, that high pitch, sometimes with a slightly thicker chocolate bar. For example, the Grenadian Chocolate Company is a slightly thicker bar. So you might have a heavier or denser snap, but the snap nonetheless should still be high pitched. If it's low pitch and dull, it hasn't been tempered correctly, and it's always a sign of quality in terms of the chocolate. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask you to take one of those pieces that you've got, the smaller pieces, Kim, and you're gonna place the chocolate on your tongue. Wait for it. Wait for it. I have to say it 3 times because people just seem to put chocolate in their mouth as soon as they get anywhere near it. Okay, so you're gonna put the chocolate on your mouth. You're gonna leave it on your tongue for about 10 to 15 seconds. Then you're gonna raise your tongue up to the roof of your mouth for a few more seconds, and then it should have been melted for you to just chew on it on the side of your mouth. Okay, so place it on the tongue, 10 seconds, roof of your mouth, and then suck on the chocolate. Don't chew, just suck on the chocolate. Over to you.
I would just bite it and eat like a savage, but
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna do it myself now, whilst you guys are.
So I just want to say while we're in the process of tasting, thank you so much, our viewers, for tuning in. Feel free to ask your questions, and also we could take a look at the color wheel, Sam and James. We could just take a look at the color wheel here on screen, and we can try to guess what flavors are we getting. And let me try to describe it.
That's it. So whilst you're tasting the chocolate, look closely at the wheel, and there'll be certain flavors that you might taste. So just have a good look at it, and sometimes there'll be flavors that will come out, and just make a note of those for afterwards. But the reason why we leave it on our tongue for 10 to 15 seconds is just to make sure that the cocoa butter, which melts at room temperature, at body temperature, really gets to melt that chocolate down so that it can let the flavors out. And then once we get the chocolate melted, we can then suck on it and try and tease out those flavors. So typically, tasting chocolate works like a wave. So you have the first flavor once the chocolate is melted on your tongue, then you kind of have the middle wave when you've started to suck on it, and then finally the final wave when the chocolate's coming down, and then you get that final aftertaste at the back of your throat potentially, or just at the sides. And that's the kind of the arc that you would take when you're tasting chocolate. So I don't know what flavors you're getting, but do you want to throw at me some of the flavors that you feel? And like I said, there's no right or wrong answer to this. So just let me know what you feel.
Ladies first.
So I would think that I had some, obviously cocoa, nutmeg, some cinnamon. There's some toasty something in it. Should I say brown sugar? A little bit, because I got a little or it could be, let me see. I got a little sweet taste coming down to the end just when I was, or it could be honey. So one of the two.
One of
Okay.
Sam.
Um, I got just about the same things: cocoa, um, cinnamon, nutmeg, coffee,
Mhm.
toasted.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Curtis?
So long as I can, and there's a hint of a almondy kind of nutty kind of, yeah.
Oh,
When I just open my mouth to speak, yeah.
well, I'm sort of getting the same set of flavors, but for some reason, why I keep tasting fruits? It tastes fruity, like I don't know, like I don't know. I'm leaning towards that purple. I don't know if because purple is one of my favorite color. I don't know why, but I'm still leaning towards it, and somewhere between raisin prune, but still getting this earthy taste. Getting the cinnamon. Yeah, sort of like earthy, strong cocoa.
I think all of you have hit a lot of the touch points of what or flavors that people would say when they taste my bar, this particular bar. There's again, there's no actual inclusion in this chocolate bar at all. So, but based on the beans and the beans on the farm in Mount Edgecombe, their farm has an amalgamation of different crops on it. Cinnamon is one of them that the beans come from, which are very close to that farm, or the cocoa that I purchased the cocoa from has a lot of cinnamon on that farm. But raisins, coffee, uh, sometimes we get a little bit of cinnamon. So those are the three key flavors that people would come out with. The raisin one is quite popular. Coffee is kind of the second degree of what people say because it's very rich and earthy. And the kind of the toasted and smoky, more so on the toasted, because of the richness of the chocolate, as it's 80% dark chocolate, people tend to get the rich toasted, and some come back with smoky, but I'd say it's more coffee than it is smoky. So you've kind of touched all of the key points. I'm glad no one came up with apricot and plum and vanilla and things like that because you would have been quite far off. Molasses is something also that people do come up with when they do taste
That was
this
the sweet
also.
part.
Um, so I mean, that's just an example of how you taste chocolate. But we've just gone through very quickly the stages, and I mean, you've just tasted one bar, but I mean, if you were to have 4 to 5, different chocolate bars from all the different chocolate companies on Grenada, and you tasted them one after the other, and you looked at this flavor wheel, you'd really be able to start finding the nuances behind the different bars, really pulling out different flavors, because it's not an art form. It's just tasting lots of chocolate, and it's the fun of tasting lots of chocolate with friends and seeing what someone tastes and what somebody else doesn't taste. And ultimately, you're only going to be able to participate in fun tastings like this based on your palate, because some people have tasted way more food than others. And what tends to happen as well is food brings memories. So whether it's when grandma used to cook something or when she was in the kitchen or dad was doing something, lots of the food that we taste brings back memories, and that is what help with the flavors that you taste, and that will jog memories as well. So like I said before, it's very much subjective. It's down to what you've tasted, but the key to it is to taste a lot of chocolate, a lot of good chocolate, and just keep on tasting chocolate, and you'll be able to start to pull out more flavors. But the key is to take your time. Don't rush it. Don't chew it. Put it on your tongue first. Let it melt. Let the cocoa butter do its job. Let your body temperature melt it down nice and smoothly, and then it will release the flavors. And there's another thing that you can do, and you don't need to do it right now, but what you can do is if you are to taste chocolate, taste another piece of chocolate at a later date, pinch your nose, taste the chocolate. So this time you're blocking one of your senses. That will release even more flavors into your mouth because you're not being distracted by what you're smelling. So now you're heightening your senses based on taste. So there's different ways that you can taste chocolate. But one way is where you just breathe it in and taste it. And the other way is where you block your nose and taste it. And another way is where you close your eyes, block your nose and taste it. And each time you block off one of your senses, you heighten the other sense to focus in on what you're tasting.
There is a question on the screen here. Monty's asking, is all chocolate organic, and what kind of sweeteners do you use? And I think you could also, I could also really ask another question after his, is in terms of the categories of cocoa beans. I know that there's fine or flavored cocoa beans, and there is bulk or ordinary cocoa beans. Now, for the people who are unaware of the terminologies, can you distinguish between these, two categories of cocoa?
Yeah, so just to answer the question, my cocoa isn't organically certified. It's organic and natural, and it comes from my farm, and it's only myself and one other farmer who actually harvests that cocoa. In terms of, I think it was sweeteners. I think the question was.
Yes. Is all chocolate organic, and what kind of sweeteners do you use? So, yeah.
Yeah, so the only, I guess, sweetener in this case is just sugar. So in this chocolate bar, as it will say at the back of the bar, we just have cocoa and cane sugar. We have a little bit of cocoa butter, but that's just to help the chocolate to mix quickly. But ultimately, those are the two ingredients that we have in our chocolate bar. And most of the chocolate in Grenada isn't certified organic, which is a very expensive stamp, but a large proportion of the cocoa in Grenada is organic, just doesn't have the lovely expensive sign on it that says that it is, but it is to a certain degree naturally made cocoa. And to answer your question on the fine flavored chocolate versus the bulk chocolate, so fine flavored chocolate in essence is it's determined by a few things, by the flavor, the texture and the appearance, as well as the limited number of ingredients that's put inside the chocolate. So bulk chocolate is typically chocolate that originates, unfortunately, originates from West Africa, typically, which is where the big chocolate companies would go and purchase their chocolate, which is pretty flat in flavor. They would then, let's say 80% of a batch of chocolate would be that. They would then go to a fine flavored country like Grenada, and they would purchase 10% and add that to the batch. And because the flavor of the beans from Grenada or Dominican Republic or Trinidad has a fine flavor to it, it would be able to impart that flavor across the overall batch of chocolate and then make that cheap 90% batch of chocolate taste like 100% Grenada flavored chocolate. So it's a very cheeky trick that some of the chocolate companies and bigger chocolate companies do. But in essence, fine flavored is where it's chocolate typically that is grown along the cocoa belt that has a limited ingredients. It has a high quality of cocoa and a low sugar content, and it's able to know where that cocoa has been sourced from is where it's determined is a fine flavored against bulk chocolate, which unfortunately doesn't really have much identification as to where it's come from. And it's the quality of the production in terms of its fermentation process and its drying isn't quite as regimented and structured as those that produce fine flavored chocolate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And just the use of your flavor wheel, I just find it very interesting. And
yeah, I
very, very
think
interesting.
the flavor wheel isn't specific just to cocoa. So the unique thing about this flavor wheel is that it can be used for coffee tasting, it can be used for wine tasting, because like with the wine that you're all drinking, I'd like to think there'll be some kind of flavor notes on the back of that bottle, and it will tell you what you should be tasting or what you might be tasting. And if not, the website that comes with that brand will tell you that, and it should do. But you can also taste wines and also use a wheel like this to articulate what you're tasting also. Whereas you look in the berry section in the dried fruit, there'll be many of those flavors that will be coming out of a Shiraz or a Merlot. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that this wheel would help you find and pull out those nuances when tasting different wines, as well as different chocolates or coffees.
Okay. Okay. I want to ask a question here. I know you touched a little bit on it as well. But what really defines the taste of a chocolate, in your opinion? And what are the eclectic flavors that can be added to chocolates?
Um,
Just to.
so what was the first part, Carlin?
Oh,
Sorry.
right. So sorry. The first part is what really defines the taste of chocolate, really, in your opinion?
For me, what determines the taste is one, the beans first and foremost, because every country that can produce cocoa will have unique flavored beans based on the type of cocoa tree they have, and then where they're located on the equator. For example, if you are to taste chocolate from Madagascar, that chocolate would literally taste like a cherry without anything added to it, compared to chocolate that's been produced in Vietnam, which tastes like coffee. Typically, most people will say Grenada cocoa tastes very much earthy, just like what you all described, has a real kind of a smoky, a cocoa-y flavor to it, earthy. Some would say a cinnamony flavor. So that to me is what determines the quality as well as the process that the chocolate's gone through. So we typically would ferment cocoa for 7 days and dry it for 7 days, but other countries would do that for 5 days, or they would turn the cocoa 4 times. And all of these nuances determine the quality of that chocolate. But for me, it's really, as long as it's a fine flavored chocolate from a cocoa growing region, that to me is what I deem to be a good quality chocolate bar.
Oh, very interesting. So my next question, and it actually it's a part of the first question that I asked. And what are the eclectic flavors that can be added to chocolate?
Yeah, so you can pretty much add anything to chocolate, give or take. I've experimented and I'm still experimenting at the moment. I'm experimenting with soursop. I want to try and make the first soursop flavored chocolate in Grenada. Um,
Mm.
there's sapodilla, which tastes so sweet. So I'm trying to work on a chocolate bar where I don't put sugar in it and I just use sapodilla instead. Um, and there's a few others. There's a few flowers that I'm kind of experimenting with. But for me, it's like gospo. I'd love to try and do something with gospo. You know, we had for me the whole passion has always been about using our fruits and spices and the cocoa, and we do great cocoa. Now let's start working with the fruits and the spices and incorporating those into chocolate. One of the chocolates that I made over Christmas was a plantain flavored chocolate, uh,
Mhm.
which was very popular, and I think that might be something that I'll look to get out there in the next few months once I've done some more testing. But the idea is to really work with what we have, to work with the farmers more, because we need to start innovating with what we have. And I think we have to try and do something unique. And if we're going to be able to start making more things in Grenada, and more importantly, export more things, because if the pandemic's shown us anything, it's that we can't sit on our backsides and wait for things to change. We have to evolve. And that's one of the things that's made me have to start working on different flavors and just working out how I can make new things. I want to make a coffee flavored chocolate. I just can't get enough coffee in Grenada, grown in Grenada, because most of all the ingredients I use so far are locally made. So I don't want to have to import anything. I want to get as much as I can get from local sources, so we can start coming up with some interesting chocolate bars and chocolate and cocoa products.
Oh man, you've been quite busy over the holidays, man.
Oh yeah.
Sam, Sam, I'm out a bit watering for another tea soon.
I have to agree with you.
I'll have my quota tomorrow.
You have your code. All right, Aaron. We want to get into a little bit more tougher question. A little bit more challenging. And I think I will start off with the legislative framework that governs cocoa production, cocoa farming, and chocolate producers in Grenada. Is there a need for improvement in that framework of policy or procedure or whatever? Is there a need for some improvement?
Yeah, I think so. There's always room for improvement. I think fundamentally we have two larger chocolate companies in the shape of Diamond, Juve, and Grenada Chocolate Company, and then you have some medium to smaller form chocolate companies. And ultimately, you know, everybody knows that we don't produce many things to export, and chocolate is one of those products, but we still aren't focusing on it seriously enough, in my opinion, and we aren't producing near enough products from that cocoa to export, because ultimately chocolate is one product that comes from a cocoa bean, but that one bean can make cocoa powder, cocoa beans, hot chocolate, cocoa butter, you know, a whole amalgamation of products. And we should all be making these products, everyone, farmers and artisans, and exporting those products. So I feel that one, we need to, you know, that needs to be a focus. And secondly, there's only 10 countries in the world that make fine flavored cocoa, and we're one of them. And for us to really put ourselves properly on the map, I know we say that we're on the map when it comes to chocolate, but to really be seriously on the map, just like champagne and certain wines and cheeses are, we need to have a geo indicator for our country, so that people know that when they get chocolate from Grenada, it is up there with the best in the world, and they know that. And someone can't just take beans and put a stamp on it in Belgium and say this is from Grenada. They have to come to Grenada and ask to be able to do so, so that at least we know that any product that is in anywhere in the world that comes with the stamp with Grenada on it, it's come from us, from our farmers, from our land, from our soil, and that product is now gone international, and it has that pedigree and that heritage that comes behind it. And we only get that by having that geo indicator that people know.
Okay. You mind telling me about, you know, the procedure, the established procedure that you know, that governs the process of, you know, that governs how someone can get into chocolate making in Grenada? What was your journey, in starting your company? Essentially,
yeah, to be honest, you know, there isn't any hard or fast rule to get into chocolate, and it's something that I press upon anyone that I meet. You know, I am really passionate for everyone. You know, people always ask, but why would you want somebody else to get into the industry and make chocolate? But for me, it's not really about that. It's about more people making chocolate products, because we have an abundance of cocoa, but not everyone can benefit from that cocoa. Once you sell that cocoa to, whether it's the government or you sell it to somebody else, the value is now transferred to that person, not from you. You've got a portion of it, but that person will now probably make more from it. So for me, it's about how do we keep the value in Grenada, but sell the product internationally. So I'm very much about making sure that everyone understands about that. And the process is very straightforward. You know, like anything, you register your business, you make sure you have your product, in this case, chocolate bar, tested, that they have the labs in TAMCC. And then you run, obviously, you have to go through the Bureau standards. But in short, that's the three organizations you need to connect with before you can get your product out into the marketplace. And then it's really having those conversations with the retailers, whether it's IGA, SOG, MNIB, to obviously retail your product. And that's in essence the journey that I've been through to get my chocolate out into the local market, as well as having it at my chocolate factory.
Sam, wow, that's a lot of information. People in the comment section really appreciate. They didn't think that it was so sophisticated, right?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you had to set the mood just to eat chocolate, you know. So, as Ezra was saying, you know, you have to, chocolate sets the mood as well.
Yeah, so I noticed.
It's part of a romance language, you know, chocolate eating.
Yeah. Most definitely is.
And what I try to remind people around Valentine's Day, when you're talking about chocolate and being an aphrodisiac, you're not talking about the milk chocolate you find on the shelf. It's the dark chocolate.
True.
That's true.
Yes.
This is the real stuff.
So what you're saying, this is definitely an inclusion in a Valentine's gift for this.
Absolutely. It has to be dark chocolate. Dark chocolate or nothing.
It does. It gives you a really nice, cool, mellow feel. Like I just had it's not the wine, it's the chocolate. I only had like 2 sips. Yes, it's a chocolate. Most definitely.
Yeah.
cool, mellow feel
I
that you
Yeah,
think
have.
the
kudos,
thing
kudos. Yeah.
Other than getting that sugar rush that you get from a Snicker bar, these different things, you don't. It's a really nice feeling.
So
what you're
after
saying.
tonight, I won't be having the mouthfuls of chocolate anymore. I will savor
Yeah,
the taste and try to get something from it.
yeah.
Maybe it's the time of day and what I had before. I will look at the wheel and see where I'm at that point in time. So no more chugging dark chocolate for me.
And I think typically we just bite and
Yeah, I would eat like
not
half a chocolate
savoring
at a
the
time.
yeah, not
That's well,
savoring.
that's it. That's it. You
Yeah.
know, it's only when someone explains to you when how to do something that you've typically always done the same way that you start looking at it a different way. And I
Yeah.
think, next time someone has a piece of chocolate, snap a piece off, put it on your tongue, and just have that self-control for 10, 15 seconds to let it melt and then start to suck on it. And then, maybe 30 seconds down the road, then you can bite if it's really not melting. But in essence, chocolate, once it touches your body, it melts at body temperature. So it should be melting within a few seconds of you sucking on the chocolate. Um, and then you get to enjoy those flavors. And I mean, sometimes just one small piece of chocolate in the evening, or even some people have it for breakfast, can completely change your mood. And that's all people need, just to give them that little kick. Some people say to me they love a piece of chocolate in the morning before even having, or instead of even having a coffee, because of the caffeine kick which they get. And then they're kind of good to go about their day. So, sometimes have chocolate at different times of the day and see how it makes you feel, because it will have a chemical, change in you, sometimes positive and sometimes negative. But I think the key is, if you're in a bad mood, have a piece of chocolate. If you're in a good mood, have a piece of chocolate, and I'm sure it will make you feel better.
What I typically would have to do, like just before your periods, menstruation, that PMS, I would have to and eat chocolate, and it would normally make me calm down a bit. But most times you go behind the milk chocolate. But I'm thinking, based on the feel now, it's probably best you just suck on a piece of dark chocolate, and that would help your mood. It's just a suggestion for me. Sometimes chocolate helps to make me feel better.
That's interesting.
Yes, it does.
It's a good shout, and I'm sure you're not alone either.
Aaron, so I
So
have
my
another.
husband will bring chocolate for me.
Yes, Sammy. That's. I have a question. Another question. Now, is there a universal accepted criterion that could be adopted as a basis for determining whether cocoa of a given origin is to be classified as fine or flavored cocoa? You want me to repeat
Yeah,
the question?
no.
Okay.
I,
Okay.
I get that. There's an organization called the Cocoa Excellence, um, and they're a kind of a program in cocoa quality and flavor diversity, which is around to kind of improve farmers and improve the sustainability of cocoa. But their ultimately their goal is to recognize the work of cocoa farmers and celebrate the quality of flavor and the diversity and the unique origins of cocoa across the cocoa growing regions. So that organization, every year they have an awards, where you would submit a sample of your cocoa beans, and they do an extensive analysis of those beans through the fermentation, through the drying, through the moisture, through the flavor profiles, through a whole array of testing to come up with the chart that tells you the quality of your cocoa, and then it allows them to determine if your country is once again seen to be a fine flavored producing cocoa country. Grenada has multiple years in a row now been deemed a fine flavored cocoa producing country, and 100% of our cocoa is fine flavored. Trinidad is also the same, but then you have some countries like Jamaica, which is 90%, and then there's some others that vary, like Dominican Republic and Haiti. But typically in Grenada, we produce 100% fine flavored chocolate, which is great achievement.
Okay. And what are some of the impediments that affect your ability to either sell or export your cocoa or your chocolate? What are they?
Well, I think the easy one is COVID-19, but I think outside of the obvious, I guess there's a few things. The challenges are really about the cost, because we don't produce the packaging that all the chocolate companies use in Grenada. So there's obviously a cost for us to import in some instances for some of the companies' ingredients. I try and use as much local ingredients as possible. So obviously sugar we import and things like that, but outside of that, everything I use, so the cocoa butter, the cocoa is all local. And as I've mentioned, the inclusions, whether it's the bee pollen, I get that from local beekeepers and incorporate all that into my chocolate. But then there's the cost of electricity. And as you know, when you're making chocolate, some of these machines have to grind that cocoa nib down for 2 days. And that's a lot of electricity being used to make the chocolate. And then I guess some of the challenges in general are just the ability for, I guess, farmers to be able to do a lot of this themselves. And I'm a big advocate of us having more central fermentations on the island, so that more farmers and more people who are interested, they may only have 4 or 5 cocoa trees, but at least if they have those trees, they want to be able to ferment their own cocoa correctly and then dry it correctly and then turn it into whatever product they want to make using that cocoa. So I think one of the challenges as to why there's going to be a slower uptake in cocoa in terms of artisans and producers is the ability to have more resources to be able to kind of do so. And obviously, you know, the concessions at the ports and the cost of, I mean, the lack of concessions sometimes and the cost of bringing in goods at the port, those are the obvious challenges. But I mean, you know, that's nothing new. But those are the key challenges that have impacted me and many others that I work with in the chocolate industry here in Grenada.
Wow, I know farmers in Grenada, you know, it's a challenge to, you know, navigate the space. But you know, one of the things that I'm really proud of is the fact that we have someone, you know, son of the soil, you know, having a brand that is very competitive to what's available on the international market. So kudos to you, man. Trust me. You know.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as we look to, you know, wrap up this conversation, I have a question that was sent in to me, and it will. I think you would definitely know. It's a female that sent in a question, but I'll just ask it. So, is chocolate an aphrodisiac? And what does eating chocolate have? And sorry, does eating chocolate have an effect on your sexual desires?
Okay, well, yes and no. So I think there's basically there's chemicals in chocolate which work very closely with serotonin. That obviously that chemical itself involves the sexual arousal that we have in ourselves, and that impacts that. So there's a couple of chemicals. One's called tritophan, if I pronounce that correctly, and there's another stimulant chemical as well. But both of those, and the second one is to do with the release of chemicals in the brain, and it's meant to be the chemical that people have when they fall in love. But you know, don't quote me on that. But you know, the fact is, people will always tell you that chocolate has a huge impact on people's desires. But there, you know, from my research, there has been tests done in the past with, I think in Italy they did a research case on 135 females to see if they felt that any different after tasting chocolate, and in essence, they just didn't. I'm afraid to say they all tasted chocolate for the week, and at the end of it, they asked them, you know, how did you feel, and then a number of questions, and they all kind of said they kind of didn't feel any particular change in their mood or in how they were. But like I said, chocolate will impact people differently, and it's all very much subjective. So I know it makes me feel happy, and for someone else, it might make them feel slightly horny. So you know, it's all.
Sam, why are you smiling?
No, it makes me feel happy, you know. So I like to have. I usually like to have just after lunch, or if I am highly stressed, you would find me eating chocolate a lot. And for me, it helps.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, I'll just take a last little bit, you know, savor it a bit.
You're chewing. You're supposed to let it stay on your tongue
Oh
for a
my
little bit, and
goodness.
then
You see, there we go. Well done,
Yeah,
Tim.
I have ADHD. Don't worry, I have ADHD. There's
but my thing though, when I see chocolates being produced in Grenada, and we speak about export, I would like to think that our chocolate should be sold to, like the rich and the famous, and in Hollywood and these places, because it's a
fine.
premium product.
Yep.
And it shouldn't just be sitting on any shelf anywhere. It should be, there should be a spotlight on it, and people should want to get their hands on it. And if we were to export this, I would want us to send it to the people who would really appreciate what is it that we're doing.
Yep.
And because obviously it's a higher price point, even if we start mass producing chocolate in Grenada, I would want it to be a premium product. That's just the way I see it, and it's
Yep.
because of the appreciation I have for it as well. And we shouldn't really be shortchanging ourselves. It's that good, so
that's
we
right.
should keep it that way.
100%, 100%, and that's you'd be surprised to know that there's a company that produces chocolate and they sell their chocolate bar for 100 US per bar, and I mean
Yeah.
that's just to show you what people are. There are people out there who are willing to spend that kind of money on a product. It's just you have to value it yourself at that price, and two, you need to believe in it. And I think sometimes we struggle with that. We feel that we have to go for the low hanging fruit instead of the fruit at the top where we belong to be. So it's really about something that I've strived to do, is to show that I may not make hundreds and hundreds and thousands of chocolate bars every single week like some of the larger companies, but you don't have to necessarily do that if the quality is there, and it tastes great, looks great. Then you sell it for the price that you believe it needs to be, because as I've explained, I stand by my product, and I like to think when people taste it, it kind of answers the questions that they may have. That we all need to do that in terms of all the things that we produce, and that's really what I like to focus on.
Some people, they like this intrigue. Maybe we need to find an animal that consumes the cocoa beans, that passes it out, and then we use that to create another product. I've seen some very strange things, and from elephant droppings and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, we just have to jump on board with that, because there are people who are gonna spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy when it's true.
No,
It
it is.
happens,
It,
So
it is true. Aaron, I remember you mentioned too, and I'm not sure if you did, but you could correct me if you did earlier. The bees is what gives the cocoa its flavor. I don't know if you said that, mentioned that before, but
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the bees. So
what?
it's the fermentation part that gives
Oh,
the cocoa its flavor. But with the 75% bee pollen chocolate bar that I have,
mhm.
I get the bee pollen from the bees. And
Oh,
the first year that I moved to back to Grenada, and I was experimenting with flavors, I purchased some bee pollen from a beekeeper. He had a mango orchard, and all the pollen from those bees tasted of mango. So
okay.
I thought I had created the first mango flavored chocolate in Grenada. However, 2017 and 2018, the bees went that way, that way, and that way, and they did not go anywhere near the mangoes, and the pollen didn't taste of it. So the key, and something that I'm really keen to try and work on, is putting bees in different orchards around Grenada, whether it be soursop, coffee, sapodilla, what have you, and see where the bees go, and see if they'll take the pollen from each of those trees. You have to have, a large orchard, because bees will travel about 2 miles away to get their bee pollen. but ideally that would allow me to be able to capture enough pollen of a certain flavor to be able to infuse that into the chocolate.
Mm.
And I think that's what goes into the to the quality of the chocolate, because it's not so readily available to have all these different flavors from the bees, that you have to capture whatever it is that you're giving us. And
Yep.
because it's in such limited supply, this is what, adds value to our product. So it's something that we can say, shucks, or it's something we can say, well, this is what we're getting now, and we have to enjoy it in this season.
And this is it, because I can only produce so much chocolate with the 2 acres that I have. So I have the 2000 beans that I made chocolate with. I have the 21 beans, and then I have beans from this harvest, the 2022 harvest. Just like with wine, you have the different years, and people want that bottle from that year because it tasted so wonderful. And then there's only 1,500 bars or 1,500 bottles of wine available, and then people are fighting over it, just like they do for Michael Jordan trainers, for example. You want to get to that point where you have that scarcity to a certain degree. And it's not so much scarcity in my regard, it's just the fact I can only produce so much because I only have so much. So because of that, you have to pay a bit of a premium because of the work and the effort that goes into producing that limited scaled product. And then for that, people will happily pay a premium because they know they can't get it. Just like a Mars bar, you can go into any shop and buy a Mars bar. So fine. But when it comes to some limited edition products, because it's so limited, you'll happily pay that price because you may never be able to taste it again or drink it again.
So I'll be saving a few bars per year.
To compare, compare the
Compare.
taste.
I'll be saving it until maybe when I'm 80, I'll have some chocolate from
That's
I'll give
if
you pallets
some
to
pandemic
I'll give you
chocolate.
pallets to
that's if Kim hasn't taken all of it, Sam.
Yes, yeah, we don't think we've forgotten about what you did.
She leave a crumb, a morsel for me.
That's right.
Yeah. And my final contribution from me to you, Aaron. What's next for you? I know you mentioned that you have some experiments that you're working on, but I also know that you have a kind of honeycomb infused in chocolate. And if you want to mention about that.
Yeah, so this is something that I just was making. I'm always experimenting with things, and something that I never got to make previously, but it's a honeycomb chocolate. So it's caramelized sugar mixed with or enrobed with chocolate, and we sell it at the factory. And it's probably our best kept secret until now, really. There's only a few people who know that we make it, and they regularly come to get it every week. So that's something that we want to really kind of do more with and make it more available into outside of the factory, and maybe get it into a few shops so we can really kind of move that. And then hopefully one of the things we're looking to work on is a kind of an energy bar, really, because I know we have great products in Grenada. Like I mentioned, the plantain, and one of the things that we're hoping to launch is an energy bar in collaboration. But hopefully, with a few good men, we'll have an energy bar coming out very soon on whether it's a chocolate bar or a chocolate bark. But the idea is to work on some kind of product that those fitness people, January is the month of getting into shape. So maybe there'll be some kind of product that we can have ready in the next not too distant future.
That's right.
Can be out there. And then just outside of that, it's really about growing the company and growing the brand. We'd like to be able to build a bigger factory, have the factory on the land up in Crochet, give people a chance to kind of do more farm to table experiences up there. And just kind of, once the world is properly spinning again, really grow the brand so we can start to export a lot more chocolate and just scale. So we're a slightly bigger operation. But for me, that's really the goal for 2022, to see us in more shops, to collaborate. We do different experiences throughout the year. Obviously, we did advent calendars for Christmas. We obviously do Valentine's Day. We always have the chance for couples to come down to the factory and make their own chocolate bar that we do. So, and obviously this year we really want to be able to open up the factory to give children a chance to come and have their birthday parties at the factory, because I'm kind of tired of parents saying to me there's nowhere for the kids to go. It's between Carmahone Park and KFC, and we have to do better than that. So I'm hoping that we can give kids the chance to come here, have a chocolate fountain, learn about chocolate, make their own chocolate bars, chocolate lollipops, and hopefully not make too much of a mess in the factory at the same time.
What would also be nice is, I know you spoke about initially, um, with your uncle doing the tours. What would be nice is if from the the beginning of the whole process, if persons could get to go to the cocoa field, actually pick the
Yeah.
cut the pod. That would be a nice experience. So it wouldn't just be a one-off. So you're part of the harvesting process. Then you move over to the factory, and then you're involved in that too. When you get to the point that you make the bar, I think that would also be a nice experience for the children. It could be something that could be done over a period of time, and you get a better understanding and appreciation for the chocolate that you have in front of you.
Absolutely, because
For me,
one
I
of
would
the
like that kind of experience.
no, you're 100% right. Because one of the things that we've done during the chocolate festival is very much that, where you come to the farm, you get to be a farmer for the day,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And one of the things that's encouraged me to kind of evolve that somewhat more is to give people a chance to come to the farm during the harvesting months in Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
But they come to the farm, help us harvest the cocoa, see the
Mm-hmm.
fermentation process in the morning, in the afternoon, have some lunch, and in the late afternoon, come to the farm and make their own chocolate bar. So
Mm-hmm.
they've had the full 360 experience.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I'd love to be able to incorporate that into schools in some way and into
Mm-hmm.
education, because I have a lot of, well, not a lot, but I have a good few kids that come.
Mm-hmm.
And the sad reality is a lot of the children that come just do not know enough about cocoa. And I
That's true.
mean, when you're growing up with cocoa trees left, right, and center,
Mm-hmm.
I should have kids telling me, I know exactly what that is. I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what the process is. And the sad reality is that's not the case. So for me, it's like I'd love them to really see it, taste
Mm-hmm.
it, breathe it, and then make it. And if we
Mm-hmm.
can do that, then I'd love to somehow be able to incorporate that into the curriculum and really
Mm-hmm.
have kids, fully immersed in how we can turn cocoa into chocolate.
Because we're rare. We're what, fine cocoa, fine chocolate. Yeah. So
We will.
we need to ensure that our the young persons here are very au fait and know about this, and probably leave a legacy for them to follow through in the future. We'd be a massive small country producing a lot of products with cocoa.
And this is it. And that for me is the vision, is to, I want as many people to use cocoa. We all have cocoa here or there, but not
Mm-hmm.
everyone uses it. And I think we need to start, being innovative and thinking outside of the box, and
Mm-hmm.
not just think that, people like me and the other chocolate companies, only because they have the machines, they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do it, whether it's a pestle and mortar or even
Mm-hmm.
if it's a food processor. You can make something from that cocoa once you've fermented it and dried it correctly. It's just now thinking about what you want to do with it. Is it
Mm-hmm.
jewelry from a cocoa bean? Is it cocoa butter products? Is it lip balm? The list goes on. It's just being innovative. Even just taking the juice from that cocoa pod,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be fast pasteurized, and that is a drink in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my many goals over the next 12 months, is to try and find a way for us to turn that juice into a drink and not just let it go into the soil and do nothing, because that's just money going down the drain, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
What when you have kids, over to your factory, what are some of the questions that you get from them, really? Like what?
Yeah. It's funny. One of the questions, a lot of kids think chocolate's bitter, and not just kids, adults too. And I find most of my time is re-educating everyone that the word dark doesn't equal to bitter. It just means it's darker than the milk chocolate which you grew up with. And I mean, once the kids taste even the 80%, because most parents will come in and say, my son or daughter won't like dark chocolate, so he won't taste that one. And then when I, push it upon them and get the child to try it, I'd say eight out of 10 children love the dark chocolate. Because not all dark chocolate tastes the same. And I think normally when we're younger, our first experience of dark chocolate is bitter because it's a bitter dark chocolate. It's not even proper dark chocolate. It's Americanized dark chocolate and European dark chocolate, which isn't the real thing. So when you get given a dark chocolate from that point forward, you just think it's going to be dark, bitter, and it brings back bad memories. And everything else that you've ever had is milk chocolate. So that's just full of sugar, and that's what you like because it tastes sweet and lovely. So for me, that's the question that I get from the kids the most. And most of them are just amazed by the amount of steps that one person has to go through to turn that cocoa bean or pod into chocolate, because they just aren't aware of the different steps in the fermentation, the drying, the grinding, the tempering. They don't see that. They just see the chocolate bar on the shelf. So for them, it's a bit of amazement in terms of how much effort goes into it, and a little bit of appreciation when they get to taste the chocolate.
I think too, from my experience, to just add, like a lot of the trips that we'll go on, they will show you that initial process, but they do not show you the connection from after the cocoa is dried to when you get the chocolate. So that's why there's a disconnect for them. So they will go to the Belmont estate and so, but because we don't spend enough time showing them that extra process, it's hard for them
Yes.
to connect. But once you do that, then they'll be able to understand and get a better appreciation of the chocolate. I just wanted to add to that for when we first introduced dark chocolate to our daughters, we were concerned that they wouldn't like it, and they eat it all the time. If you put it in the fridge and you don't say anything, by the time you turn around, they eat it like if it's the regular milk or sweet chocolate. Done.
And this is it. One of the other tactics around the I guess the honeycomb that we produce, which is just it's caramelized sugar, so it's very sweet, but we cover it in dark chocolate. So you got people who are like, oh, it's dark chocolate, but wow, it's sweet on the inside, and then they love it. And then that's how you get people into dark chocolate, because you're using it in different ways. Even we make plantain chips, mixed dip, 1/3 of it dipped in chocolate. So you get the sweet with the dark, and you mix the two together, and most people end up being happy. So it kind of works.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Beautiful. So, I think it was quite enlightening. I've been to your shop. I've made chocolate myself. I like a lot of nuts, so I like the experience where you actually put your different ingredients into that chocolate. And I'm glad that you actually mentioned that for this year, definitely a few good men would love to partner with you to, as part of our men's health revolution that we're trying to roll out this year, to bring out, a protein bar or a nutritious bar together, that people who gym and always in the gym. Sam, I know your muscles, so that means you're gymming too, So, we'd love to come out with that, because I believe that, having product, that you can market and sell is very important as well. Something that belongs to us. And I know that it's definitely going to be a success. Mr. Sylvester, I appreciate you. Wonderful presentation from the likes of it in the comment section. People were really enlightened. And you really think that, you get a bar of chocolate and you yank it, that's it, right? But to have that sophisticated experience of tasting and so forth, it's really like wine, like a chocolate connoisseur type of experience. Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And definitely we're going to hear more about our collaboration as we go forward. So any last words from yourself, Sam, Mrs. James, as we look to wrap up tonight's dialogue?
But we're going to give Aaron the last word.
Sure. True.
Fine, we'll give Aaron the last word. I just said it was a pleasure, and I enjoyed learning about tasting chocolate. I'm definitely going to. It's like fine dining for me now, so I wouldn't just be yanking on my chocolate. Thank you very much for that.
No, it's my pleasure. Firstly, thank you for having me on the show. I just want to say, if anyone has any questions that they didn't get to ask, or if they want to reach out to me, more than happy to do so. I'm happy to to share any knowledge that I do have, or answer any questions that people might have about how to get into chocolate, or how to make something that involves chocolate. Or you can just come down to the factory and come speak to me directly. So I'm more than happy to connect and share with anyone that wants to.
We'll be there. We'll be there.
Yeah,
So
bring
I'm
your
no
kids
longer in the dark about chocolate, but I'm in the dark.
in the dark.
More into dark chocolate.
So, so if I call you Grenada's Willy Wonka, would that? No, okay, no. I don't know.
I tend to go many.
Just sugar.
Well, many.
You can't put him.
I know. I'm just joking. No, it was just a joke.
No. I was just gonna say many people do actually call me Chocolate Man. So that's
Chocolate
more.
Man. Okay.
That's more the nickname that I've been coined by
nice.
many 7-year-olds, and now it's stuck.
Really?
Yeah.
The Chocolate Man.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful, man. All right. Well, appreciate. Thank you so much. It was really enlightening. And yeah, actually, we get a comment here. Someone is actually liking the Chocolate Man.
Maybe for
All
other
right.
reasons.
Yeah.
Be careful.
All right, guys. Remember, support local, guys. Support local is really
absolutely.
important that we do support local. Because we sometimes tend to think that things from the United States is better than what we have here. Far from the truth. Okay. And I really want to wish our viewers and our followers wonderful and happy New Year. We look forward to great things this coming weeks and months from A Few Good Men. Stay tuned, stay logged in, like, subscribe, follow, share, like, comment, share. We really appreciate it. Also check out Trial and Chocolate. The location is at in Grand Nads. Remind me of the location again. Fallage, yes. Fallage, right?
Just next to Nexus in Regis Palms.
Right. The last location is on Lucas Street. It's just stuck in my head, so I need to reacquaint myself.
There's a lovely video on I was looking that shows the whole studio and I like the view. It's really spectacular. So imagine eating your dark chocolate looking at that view.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Sam, Mr. James, Sylvester, appreciate. Thank you so much. And we'd love to have you back to talk about some of our plans as we move forward with our collaboration. Yeah.
More than happy to, guys. More than happy. All the best to you guys as well.
Peace and blessings. All right.
All the best.
Wonderful.